Here we are, live and direct, with some very notable and illustrious guests. We got none other than the Dean of Esoteric Studies. We got the Pacific Coast Haitian community, aka Stan, and we got the lovely Miss O'Shawn. And what is the topic going to be tonight? Magic principles. But we got to ask, what the heck is a magic principle? You know, because usually when people think of magic, they think of something that is very usually nefarious, usually kind of deceptive. But is that even what magic is? I mean, are people just having a delusion, a fantastical delusion about what it actually means, you know? And we're going to get right into it because I know that time is very precious and it's your most precious asset that you can't get back. So we're going to make this stream very direct and very fruitful. So I'm going straight to the Dean of Esoteric Studies. So I know that you consider yourself an alchemist. So I would like to ask you, what first sparked your interest in alchemy or sorcery, and how did you get involved with that practice?
Okay, so like most people that I've talked to, we grew up in church, and the church couldn't quite answer the questions that arise when you read the Bible for yourself. So going to Bible study and Sunday school, I would ask questions based on the things that I was learning in the Bible, and no one could answer my questions. So that led me into really being attached to Christ in a way that was more than what Christianity was saying. And so as I began to pray and read and fast and do all those things that they told us to do to bring us closer to God, I found out that when you come to Christ and your mind is renewed, the doors to esoteric knowledge will be opened unto you. And so pretty much that's how I got into it, through Christ as the gateway.
All right, cool. Thanks for that answer. What about you, Stan? How did you get into it? And first of all, Stan, do you consider yourself, how would you identify yourself in this realm of magic?
Well, I just said this. Well, I'd say more like some people call me a shaman because I'm more like a healer, and just more like I'm just at a service for people, and how I came to it, because as a Haitian, is always taught like it's just bad and evil, but then it's always in your presence. And then I saw a correlation between what I'm not supposed to do and what I'm supposed to do, aka Christian. I was like, wait a minute, these things are very similar here. And just like Dean said, like churches couldn't answer it because everything was evil. And for instance, in the second grade, I was put into ESP, which is called, which is like educational supplementary program. So I have ADHD. But when I brought it to my parents, they thought I told the school that I have dreams and I could see into the future, which I did and still do. And so they thought the schools were trying to train me into witchcraft, which led me to going to church that night, people praying over me, burning my packets. And and I had a spelling book, which it was only a spelling book to learn words to spell. I'm in the second grade, and they burned that. My father had to pay the school district back up for the book that was destroyed. But yeah, it was a love and hate that was going there, where I needed to study and read for myself and have an understanding, but at the same time not talk to anybody else about it, because you'll be shunned. So that's what happened for me.
Okay, cool. So when you say that you would, just before I move on to Miss O'Shawn, so when you said you would be shunned, what exactly did that look like? Did somebody say, hey, don't deal with him, he's weird? Because you know...
No. Haitian community is a little different. It's definitely, you'll be forced to read the Bible. You have to pray. It's kind of like a punishment. The family will know like you're doing extra practices. So for me, like sixth grade, I was doing a science project on sea monkeys. I don't know if people know about sea monkeys. It's basically dried, fresh, not fresh, like frozen shrimp. They're just frozen to a crystal. But the problem with it, you have to know how to fix the water for them to wake up, right? So I've gone through several kits and they never worked. So I did some more research. And this time when I made it work, I didn't know that when the crystals dissolve in the water, it turned red, which freaked my parents out. I was called a necromancer. My mother's calling everybody from Haiti, Cuba, Miami, New York. That I'm practicing witchcraft. And it's just been like, that's the type of shun. It's like, well, certain programs I wasn't allowed to watch, certain movies nobody let me watch. So it's like one of those type of things. What I mean by shun. There's a lot of things I was just hidden.
Okay, I got you. And Miss O'Shun, I got the same question for you too. This is just a preliminary question. What sparked your interest, in magic, alchemy, sorcery, any of these magical practices?
Well, I'll say this. I wasn't sparked in terms of an interest, right? It was like I was in a dark room and I was led through the darkness, and then I found myself there and I realized why I was in the dark room. I come from a family in the South where certain people practice, what I would consider as bad magic, right? And there's these stories that came up from the South that I knew about, as far as like my grandparents and great grandparents. And I never had indulged in it. We even wanted to know about it, but I knew about these stories. And it was like way in the corners of my mind. And one day someone had did something very egregious to me. And it cut me deep in my heart space. And I became so enraged that I said, okay, somebody's life is going to end by the end of this year. Even if it takes my own, their life is going to end. And I went searching for what I needed to do that. And I didn't even know what I was doing. I just knew at this point, I know something that I can use to harm someone and bring them the same pain as me. And I was willing to sacrifice my own life if that pain would meet them. And it was like a real dark place for me, like in my mind, like how I went searching for this information, because I knew where it was hidden. Even if I didn't know what it was, I knew where I could find it. And so I went looking for it. And that rageful spirit that I guess was in my family line was like alive in me. And I went looking for it and I couldn't find it. Even though I knew where it was supposed to be, it just wasn't working for me. But what was working for me was, and it was just one video. I went looking and something said, just go to YouTube and start, looking around. Maybe you'll find it there, right? So I typed into YouTube, and the only thing that kept coming up was a particular guy by the name of Raul Nefer. And there was this one particular video he had, and it said magic in the title, and it was talking about the death of a man, right? And I didn't understand why it was called magic and the death of a man, right, or something like that. And so I clicked on it just to figure out why is the title like this, because it didn't look like that. So I'm like, what's up with that? Let me take a listen. And it was just like a small little urge of mine to just watch it all the way through. And by the time I watched that entire video all the way through, something had gripped me and it wouldn't let me go. And I didn't listen to anything. I didn't watch one video except for what was coming out his mouth. So every day I was listening to this man talk, this man's podcast. And he's like every bit of 80, 90 years old. And so for a whole year, all I did was immerse myself in everything that this man had to offer. And I even actually went down to the Oseo Set Society in DC where he was, and I met him. And I spoke with him briefly. And I had became acquainted with the Queen Mothers there, and got into one of the classes. And it was I got so deep into it, I forgot why I even came to it. And when I finally looked up, I realized that I never was supposed to have done what I wanted to do. That's not why that happened to me. It happened to me because that was the only way to lead me down this path. Whereas it was a dark path. I didn't see that path. I didn't even know it existed in this way. And by the time I got down there, I woke up and I was in a whole nother place in my heart space, in my life, in my mental. And, coming into, let's say, the practices of, sorcery, most people say, well, I'm coming into it to understand, how things work. I came into it not knowing anything. And I was actually rageful, which is like the worst way to be. And so, I realized through going through that process and getting, readings and having my life path reading done and, certain washings and rituals that, this was my path. Even as hard as it was for me to get here, this was my path. I wasn't meant to come into it the clean way. And I didn't. I cried. I went through as they say, a dark night of the soul. In fact, I think I went through a lot of dark nights, and it was like a cleansing ritual for me, going through it and learning all of the different specific quote unquote entities and what they meant in my life and where they were presently in my life. So, I learned who I was in the whole mix of things and what I wasn't as well. And so once that happened, then I started growing within the knowledge. So I came into it as a baby, learning how to basically stand up and not be a child. And then after that, it took me a few years of moving through different systems and a few years of being under different priests as well to understand and truly what magic and the principles is under it. Because if you come to one system, you'll get some understanding. But when you go through different systems, you start seeing everything differently in the ways that it all connects. And so I was very fortunate to be able to do that in so many different ways, even inside of my time through Buddhism, and it was a blessing. So that's how I came into it. Very much someone who was chaotic in my mind space, in my heart. I didn't know anything, but I wanted to destroy someone with a tool I knew nothing about. So, that's how I met this, but of course I'm no longer in that space, and I've healed a whole lot since back then. And yeah, weird way to come into knowledge.
Man,
But
a weird way. I was gonna say that was one hell of a way to be introduced. And before I move on back to the Dean of Esoteric Studies, she also described or titled what it sounds like you went through as an inner transformation and a spiritual awakening. And based on just the generic meanings, I'm just going to read those off. You can tell me if this what you experienced, yes or no, and then I'm going to just move on with the next question. So the spiritual awakening, and of course these are just like very generalized answers and descriptions, not just getting into the nuance of it, because I thought you did a very thorough breakdown of what basically inspired you or called you into delving into the magic realm or world entities, however you want to call it. But a spiritual awakening is a subjective experience in which an individual's ego transcends their ordinary, infinite sense of self to encompass a wider, infinite sense of truth or reality. And the inner transformation relates to various aspects of human existence and interactions, such as consciousness, mindsets, values, worldviews, beliefs, and spirituality in human nature connectedness. So it sounds like this is accurate based on what you described. Is that pretty much kind of sums up what you went through when you were in your dark place and how you kind of came out of it?
I would say it's 100% accuracy. I'm not one of, a person of fancy words, but I would definitely say that was an accurate depiction of the overall experience that I had in a way that most people can understand. Of course, obviously there's nuances there, but generally speaking, yeah, I would give that an A+ on the description.
Cool. And yeah, thank you for sharing too, because one thing about Miss O'Shun, she's always, of course, we don't always agree with each other, but no one agrees 100% of the time. So I don't even fixate on what we disagree with because I know I agree with her more than I disagree with. So I don't want to harp on the disagreements. But one thing, when she is explaining something, she is very thorough and she is very transparent. Sometimes when people on these internet platforms, they just take for granted when people are sharing private, personal, and intimate details about what they went through. And people are easily able to criticize and critique, well, why did he or she do that? Or I wouldn't have done that. But you're not even in a position to criticize because you wouldn't have been able to handle the situation or scenario that I just described. Plus, if you want to criticize, it's kind of like when somebody says, hey, this person is dusty, and they start talking about people looks, but they never cam up, and then they just have an avatar. Okay, cool. You're entitled to talk about somebody's looks, but now you got to cam up so we can critique your look. You can talk about what someone's past and went through, but now you need to lay out what you did in your past so we can critique that too. But then nobody wants to keep that same energy.
Hmm.
So if you're not willing to be transparent like she is, are you really in position to criticize? You just want someone to divulge very important information so you could try to pick it apart, but we have nothing to pick apart about your life? Because you could say Miss O'Shun did this, but if we start digging into your past, you did something way worse than she could ever fathom. But that's the road that people don't want to go down. So I don't try to deal with that type of nonsense. But I did want to salute you because you, like I said, whether I disagree with her, she makes substantive and detailed arguments to back up what her perspective is. A lot of cats will be looking for goofy reasons to say, hey, this person is masculine or this person is the single mom. Like, what the hell does that have to do with the point that we're making or the topic that we're discussing? You feel me? So I just had to add that in there because I thought that was definitely very thorough, and I appreciate people that are comfortable enough to share things that actually are meaningful and change their life in some type of way. So shout out to Miss O'Shun for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. But we're going to go on to the Dean of Esoteric Studies, and with the second one, it says, how do you define white magic, black magic? I heard Miss O'Shun mention good and bad magic. Could you describe some examples of each, or do you even use those titles? Black magic, dark magic, white magic, good magic. What are the appropriate terms that you use, and could you break down what they mean to you?
Well, I don't use good or evil. I don't use white or black. I don't use any of that. I feel like everything is connected, is one and the same, and it's based on your intention. What are you seeking out of that white, quote unquote, or dark or black magic? So I basically think it's intent. However, The world says white magic is the love and light stuff. You know what I'm saying? Like casting spells to draw in love and all of that wonderful stuff. And then the dark magic or the black magic will be associated with evil, trying to do things to people, you know, seeking revenge and things like that. But I don't separate them. I think it's all one and the same. We all use magic for our own personal benefit, whatever that may be. That's it.
Go ahead, Stan. What does that mean to you? Because you were the one, and actually Stan I was using the term dark magic, and Stan, I think he was in the chat. He came up on the panel like, no, do not use that term dark magic. I'm like, God damn, bro, my bad, bro. So Stan, I know you got a lot to say. What do you think about this dark magic, black magic, good magic, evil? Because we want to get the terms appropriate, and it's true. As soon as you hear dark magic, and that's why I was talking to the ladies earlier about voodoo. As soon as you hear voodoo, it's an automatic negative connotation towards it. So nobody even, once you say that, hey, I do voodoo or I'm a shaman, they're already looking at you as some sort of deceptive kind of trickster that is going to cast a spell on them. And like the Dean of Esoteric Studies is saying, we're all casting spells. We're all using magic, but we're not viewing it as magic. So could you speak on to that more and kind of set the record straight about the dark magic, white magic, black magic, etc.?
Oh yeah, I want to add on what Dean said. That what Dean says is true. The reason I was like really didn't like it because it's always when you hear dark magic, it's for black people. Just like white lies, black lies. You know, it's the same thing, but you know because we do it, it's even worse, right? So that's why I don't like it because like you're doing white magic.
Oh, yeah,
okay,
like devil's food cake, angel.
You know what I'm saying? But it's chocolate. Right? It's chocolate, but like it's a devil food cake. Then you got the angel cake and it's white. And it's like, okay. Right? So, you know, that type of stuff always like it just you hear it because anything that says black, because mind you, black as a race, but then everything else associated with being black is also negative, is not helpful. So that was my only concern because here's something when someone say white magic but they use it as a love spell, you're taking away somebody's will. So if you did it through voodoo or you did it through TikTok, you know, you're taking somebody's will from them. You know, you got to go through rejection. So you're using something to lure them in. You're having kids that you're not meant to have. And now you got somebody stalking you that you want to break up because guess what? You fell in love with somebody else. And that wasn't considered dark magic.
Was that a spell?
Yeah, but understand, but the whole premise of it was since it was a love spell, it's not dark. It's white magic. And I was like, no, you're taking away somebody's free will. Even God don't do that. God gives all of us our own free will. So here you are manipulating the situation for your own benefit, and you say it's white magic, and I'm like, oh, okay. Your intention is bad.
Thanks.
So
I like that.
Yeah,
it's kind of like when somebody's using the Bible, right? And they'll say it's the Bible and these are the teachings, right? But then they also had a slave Bible, right? So they used the Bible that was supposed to be some white magic, right? It's supposed to be something that was saving and healing them, but they used this white magic to manipulate. So was it even really white magic? Sounds like some dark evil magic. So I see what you're saying in terms of how you use it, right? Because it gets very convoluted with the usage of the term. You know, when someone says I'm a Christian, and then you look at the tenets of Christianity, and then you're not living up to anything that you say that you know that you stand for. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say for like the book of James, right? What it says, like watch what you say, your mouth could. And I'm just paraphrasing here. Your mouth could bring life or death, right? Like so, for example, when my mom called me a necromancer, right? That
Ooh.
brought life to something that was dead. I had to also look at it because Christian home. I have to look at it. So I go to school, I go to a library and look at what necromancer is, and it's bringing the dead to life. Now, mind you, we're all doing this with science. So before
Mm-hmm.
anybody go crazy, if you look at science itself and pharmacies and everything that we're doing now, we're able to bring a lot of things back to life and cloning and everything else, right? So don't come in here high and mighty. Just want people to go ahead and check themselves real fast. But you realize that even with your own mouth, you can destroy somebody and bring death to their life.
Mm-hmm.
And let me just it's actually Proverbs 18:21. The tongue has the power of life and death, and those who love it will eat its
Yeah.
fruit.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
There you go.
So,
Oh
so
damn, Sister Anania hit it in there too, right when I was saying that. So she was on it. So shout out Proverbs 18:21. And Risa Neal says, yes, it is power in the tongue. And I always say words are weapons.
Mm-hmm.
so a lot of times when we say something, you can call something to somebody, and and it could be something dark, right? But do we call it dark magic? No.
No,
But what we
people
call
call it toxic, but maybe
no,
it
no,
is
no, no.
dark magic,
Or
right?
sometimes people say like, "I'm just telling you the truth." Like, what was
Okay.
your intention? Like, really, were you telling the truth because you want them to do better, or you was telling them the truth because you want to see them fail?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you speaking then. So let me go to Miss O'Shawn. Do you use terms like that? Dark magic, black magic. Actually, I did just hear you use the term good magic. So could you kind of speak on what that terminology means to you? If you think it's accurate terminology to use, and if not, how should we be addressing this dark magic, good, evil magic whole paradigm?
I'll say for myself, right? I've understood when I say bad magic, it's not necessarily a term that is like a factual term, right? But it's the way I've understood people that practice magic or manipulation of energy to do wrong to someone, right? Without respect for the rules of the game, basically. And what I mean by that is this. For instance, right? And by the way, if somebody must think of magic in different ways, it's best to think of it, in my opinion, as um let's say high magic and low magic. Now, both high magic and low magic are good magic, right? But in my opinion, when you say low magic is like when you manipulate energies to deal with mundane issues like I need $10. There's a baby shower and we need a big cake. Stuff like that. Like that's low magic. High magic is when you manipulate energy so that, let's say for example, you don't need certain things in your life, or let's say you want to be able to see into the future without causing yourself to lose yourself, right? To hold your energy, let's say hold your poles together. Like that right there is what I would consider high magic, because you're talking about going into a dimension that you have to be careful with, because now you're now manipulating consciousness itself, which is something that is very unstable that we don't understand. So, for instance, if somebody understands how to stretch time with their mind, that's something that is very much not talked about in open spaces. But the reason why is because it's dangerous, and that's what I consider high magic. So you're not manipulating energy to get regular stuff. It's on a whole nother level. But when I understood bad magic, it was like, for instance, what the Bible says: when you make one trap for somebody else, understand that you are making two, not one. So, like, when I saw people do bad magic, for what I define as bad magic, is when they say, okay, I don't like what somebody else did, so I'm gonna create a ritual and create a ritual for them to fall into a specific trap because I don't like what they did. When in reality, I'm doing something to them, but the rules is what you make happen to someone else, that same energy is coming from you, that means it's going to return to you. That's how it works. So you better be damn sure clear of what you're doing, because the Bible did not lie. And in actuality, the Bible is high magic as far as I'm concerned, because it's giving you the principles of magic in a very straight and forward, very summed down kind of way so that you can understand. For instance, another thing, before point at the tree in someone else's eye, or let's say the splinter in someone's eye, take the tree out of yours. If you do a ritual, right, because you don't like something somebody did to you or to someone else. Meanwhile, you're guilty of the same thing, and you're inside of this creating energies. When you're guilty of the same thing on them, why do you think they say Papa Legba plays tricks on people that come to him? This is why. Because he's the gatekeeper. He's the
Mm-hmm.
gatekeeper because of stuff like that. And it's like, I mean, I even heard somebody say, don't work with Papa Legba or Eshu Legbara because he will kill people and he's bad. No, 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 no. That's not what that is. These people don't understand the rules of the game. It's like when you come to this, you need to come to this humble. If you don't, it will humble you. There's no way around that. And it's like, when we talk about, well, what's good and what's bad, if you come to the table needing to learn a lesson, like Stan said when we was off air, you will learn that lesson. Now, whether or not you consider it bad or not is on you. But the good thing about it is you will learn. You might not get what you asked for, but you will learn the lesson though, which is really what you're asking for. I mean, like, truth be told, like, when you ask to, not even when you ask, when you create the energy to force someone's will to come towards you, right? Because of what you feel you need. Here's the lesson. For instance, you say you want a woman, right? You're a guy, you want a woman. Let's say she's in a relationship and you want her specifically. And you do a ritual to get her, right? The lesson is you will get that woman. You will. But because you broke up something that wasn't meant for you to break up, what you will get is just that woman. You won't get her love. You won't get her adoration. You won't get her loyalty. You will just have what you asked for, which is that woman. And soon you will hate that woman because you didn't do it right. And it's like the best thing to do if you're going to do any rituals, if you really need to do rituals, okay, do a ritual on yourself. Do a ritual where that ritual affects you and your attractiveness to what you need, not coming to magic saying I want that person regardless of what that person's life path is, regardless of that person's will, regardless of what I need versus what I want. You're sitting there basically trying to play God. And it's like, remember, you're not the sole controller in this thing. So when you try to manipulate, it's like the butterfly effect. You manipulating other things, and if you don't know about that because you just in this thing trying to do some little whoopie whoop to get what you want, you will learn a hard lesson, which is why some people put a negative connotation on magic, because it seems like it's backfiring. It's not that it's backfiring. People come to it on some bullshit, and then it shows you who you are. It holds a mirror up to who you are. So when some people do rituals, they do rituals a certain way to protect themselves. Like for me, I've done rituals for friends of mine, but I did it in a way to protect them and protect me from any energy that will come back, because I don't know all that there is to know on anybody's side. But when I do a ritual, I have to be careful about that. So I don't just do rituals, because truth be told, I shouldn't even be living my life in a way where I need to do a ritual every time something wrong happens. That's not how it works. It's like, yes, you can manipulate energies and get things all you want, but you should be living, your whole life should be a ritual. In reality, it should be. So, I mean, I've learned that when you really need to do a ritual where You got all sorts of, let's say, paraphernalia involved, and it requires certain things. That's like very dire emergency circumstances. But generally speaking, when it comes to love, when it comes to money, when it comes to knowledge in terms of like things you may need to know about friends, family, the future, these are things that you have to temper when you come to, the system of magic. Now, this isn't a religion, so you don't have to come to it, because again, like you guys stated before, everybody's doing magic. They're just not calling it magic because they just don't see how it's magic, versus other people openly saying, hey, no, 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 this is sorcery, this is magic, and anything like it is that. And I would even go as far as to say, listen, Jesus taught you magic. His entire career in the Bible is nothing but magic. It's nothing but magic, but people don't see that. When he said, you can do greater things than I've done in terms of these quote unquote miracles, people never ask themselves, you telling me I can do greater things than bringing people back to life in this life? Like in the flesh? Yeah, that's what he told you. But do you really believe him though? No, because you got this idea that if I touch something dead and bring it back to life, I'm practicing necromancy, and I'm worshiping the dead, and now I'm creating false gods, and now I'm all against the Bible, and Jesus doesn't love me. This is straight ludicrous. So I mean, and I don't want to harp on that too much, but this is at least how I understand the differences between good and bad magic. There is no such thing as good and bad magic per se, but the way I personally defined it from what I've learned initially in my family, when you use that tool the wrong way, I'm gonna say you practicing bad magic. But in truth, right, there is no bad magic, because I'm sure, because I don't know, but I'm sure everyone that has done things with that tool that they wasn't supposed to do, they learned their lesson the hard way. They did. And honestly, based on the stories that I heard coming back in my family, certain family members got a hefty dose of, don't come to this magic system with that bullshit. Later on in life, let's just say that. And I don't mean much later on either, but I'm willing to bet a few lifetimes on that. So yeah.
Cool. Thank you so much, Lola. And Risa Neal says, Papa Legba people think it's bad because of Halloween stories. Before I move on, could you tie in what your beliefs are on Halloween? Because some people think that it's just completely demonic and an evil day of celebration. And some people say, hey, it's my favorite holiday. And other people think that it's not a holiday. So what is your position on Halloween and how it ties into magic? Because a lot of people dress up as witches, paint their face, and typically it's associated with the darker side of magic. But does Halloween, magic, do they have any correlation to each other, Miss O'Shawn? And then I definitely want the dean to pick that up before I move on to the next question. But I want to hear what you got to say, Miss O'Shawn. And actually, do you dress up? Like, I could see you dressing up for Halloween as a little hocus pocus witch. Go ahead, rock out, Miss O'Shawn.
I'm gonna say this, right? Generally speaking, no. I'm gonna definitively say no. Halloween and just the system of magic, there's no direct correlation to say Halloween is like magic comes from Halloween, or Halloween comes from just a general system of magic. I haven't seen where there's a direct correlation there. However, Halloween in and of itself is a spirit, if you understand. Like, it's a spirit that's been created, right? Now, to my understanding, it comes out of the European system, right? Magic system. Now, that is a real magic system. It didn't start the way we see it today. It didn't. And, but however, again, it's a spirit and it's grown over time. And so, when they say, well, Halloween is bad, and they say, well, it's a day where it comes close to, let's say, an opening in the spiritual world where you can talk to people on the other side, right? That happens all the time. That doesn't happen just on Halloween. So that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying that the Wiccan system or the European system are not true in terms of Halloween. However, if you're asking me, is there a specific day where it's better for you to speak to dead people, not dead people, but people that are on the other side, or have passed on? Maybe, maybe not. But in my experience, I've had other people's dead relatives come to me on the fly that I didn't know, and some I did know, and they made it very clear who they were and why they were there. And I didn't ask them to come there, and it wasn't Halloween. So I mean, I can't say anything is false because it's not false. But let's be clear, Halloween is a day that if you celebrate it, right, you celebrate it because you resonate with it in some way, shape, form, or fashion. I know for me, like, I like it. It is one of my favorite holidays, but not because of magic. Really, because I just like the festivities that are around Halloween. I like the
You like that birthday
yeah.
suit, huh? Miss
Listen,
O'Shun
listen.
be
No.
exactly. There it go. Go speak on it. Miss O'Shun
I
be
like
showing out.
I do like the festivities. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, I mean, I like I like the Day of the Dead too. Like, that's not Halloween per se, but that's similar. But I love that holiday. Like, I just love it. It's so intriguing, and I feel that energy, and it inspires me. But it's an energy that's been created, and when you catch that energy too and you flow with it, it's not about religion and belief. That's not what it is. You have to actually experience that in order for you to know. But if Halloween ain't your thing, then it ain't your thing. But I'm gonna tell you now, a lot of people in their house, they got shrines up dedicated to, quote unquote dead people. And a lot of people talk to grandma, and they go into graveyards talking to dead people at graves. But yet when people talk about the Day of the Dead and Halloween, and people were like, "Oh my God, that's sacrilegious," and it's like, no, 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 no. You're practicing that in your Christian and Islamic religion all the time, but but you don't call it that. But you're doing the very exact same thing, But that's how I see it.
Okay. So before I move on, what was your favorite costume that you had, Miss O'Shun?
You know what? One of my favorite costumes is the what you call it, the ladies that hide behind the mask, right? I like that. Like, the ladies of the night that hide behind the feathered mask. I like
Okay.
that.
Is it
Yeah.
kind of like a little masquerade type thing?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I like the feather thing. Like, I don't know
Okay.
why I like the feather thing, and when I dress up, that's what I do. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So Miss O'Shun like to be, had that little sexy but classy look. I see you, Miss O'Shun. I knew it. See, that's the thing. When it comes to the like dressing up, I know some women, they like to have a lot of revealing stuff, but I know with that one, those usually are typically very classy costumes. So I do appreciate that. I wasn't expecting you to go there. I thought you was gonna say something, where you had your cheeks out. You feel me? I was gonna say Miss O'Shun, but
Yeah, no, no. A lot of
hey,
people associate Oshun with that, and that would be correct in some regards. But
see, that's what I'm saying.
it would. I'm not even gonna take that away from them. That would.
Okay.
But for me, I like the idea of the mystery of the depths. I like that.
Yeah, that's really what gets me, when they say the mystery and leaving something to the imagination. Now, if the cheeks was out, I would appreciate and marvel at the cheeks. However, if they not out, now you can kind of imagine and fantasize, and it kind of makes that person more desirable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But that's just my belief. Some people need to see stuff up front, but I kind of do like to kind of work my way to the treasure chest. You know what I mean? But that's just me.
I mean, but
But
there's a spirit within not knowing and having to know still. So it's like, I like when I dress up and people can't, they have to encounter me a certain way. And it's not like, okay, I'm dressed up like a bunny rabbit, right? Because that's something that we let children do. But in reality, when we dress up, we take on the spirit of the very thing that we're dressed up as. So
Oh,
when you dress
you
up,
talking now, Miss
I'm just
O'Shawn?
saying that's what we doing. We
Is
training
are
up.
you casting? I'm speaking of this. Are you casting a spell with what you're revealing? Like, say, if you're wearing certain cleavage and form fitting stuff, and the cakes is out, is that casting the spell? Also, once you're presenting this, that's kind of casting the spell too, because you're forced to look in the eyes, which some consider the most important aspect of body language. So, in both instances, are you casting a spell by you revealing less, or by you also revealing a lot? What you think about that?
Yeah, in both ways. Yeah, you are casting the spell. In reality, with some of the ocean rituals that I've done, I usually wear a mask, and I'm not fully masked, but I usually wear a mask. And honestly, if you look at some of the indigenous systems overseas, you see that they, when they do rituals, they wear masks. Now those masks are very elaborate masks, but what happens is those masks represent certain things, and when you put that mask on, you are embodying that very thing. So you have to have a certain level of respect and knowledge about what you are masking over yourself. So, I don't, it's nothing wrong with dressing up as, a cartoon character or whatever the case may be. But this is like training wheels for what we deal with as adults, as far as like taking on the personification of a specific entity, a specific spirit, and actually living in that for a day or a night, or in some people cases every day. Um, that's what that is, and I don't see anything wrong with the commercialized version of Halloween, because it is what it is. But in a more serious conversation
So you
about,
don't take offense to it like some other, because like the point that you brought up about, I like what you were bringing about when you were bringing up worshiping people at the funeral or their cremated remains, etc. People understand that form of worship
right.
to a deceased figure or entity or spirit. But then when it comes to, like you said, Halloween or the Day of the Dead that some other cultures celebrate, then suddenly, like you said, people are saying it's blasphemous, it's sacrilegious. How could you do that? It goes against my religious or Christian values. It's like, that's what I'm saying. This is where the hypocrisy and contradictions get a tad bit goofy for me. So that's kind of why I was kind of asking what your position was on that.
Yeah, no, I totally, and I'm totally in agreement with you on that, and I see it. But when somebody shows me that they can't mentally, they're not ready to accept that, I don't push it on them, because they can be literally in that mode where they're going to the cremation, they're going to the funeral home, whatever the case may be, and they're praying at somebody's grave and having a conversation with them. And for me, if me coming to them and saying, hey, what you have here is an ancestral altar. What you have here is you talking to someone that's crossed over, and you can actually hear it, like you can feel it too. And this right here is what people celebrate on Halloween, that can be done any day of the year. So people would say, well, are you trying to say I'm celebrating the day of the devil? Listen, however you want to define devil, right now we're talking about actual things, actual people that were living, that are not living, but somehow some people can be connected, because there's certain things about us that transcends time space. So that's why we have this connection to quote unquote the dead, because there's a certain aspect of your being that cannot be disconnected because someone dies, or their body it expires. That's not that it's not disconnected because of that. You were still connected to the very first human, but we don't feel it because it's in the far reaches of who we are, but we're still connected. There is no disconnect there. So it's like, when if someone isn't ready to accept that knowledge shouldn't be imparted on them. And that was part of my life path, recognizing when someone is ready and when they're not. Because every student, there is a teacher and not a moment before. If you don't want to be a student, there will be no teacher for you. But the second you want to learn, a teacher will show up literally magically out of nowhere. Whether or not it's a tree, a person, a whisper, a dream, whatever, a teacher will come if you want to learn, but not until you want to learn. So I've had to learn to temper my own understanding when it comes to that and allow people to have their ignorance until they're ready to know more.
Cool. Thank you so much, Miss O'Shawn. And I'm going straight to none other than the Dean of Esoteric Study. So I definitely want to get to the next thing, but I gotta hear you chime in on the Halloween bit. And I want to know, what type of costume are you rocking? Because I think I've seen you in one. I think is it the Maleficent or
Yes,
something?
100%. Yes.
I've seen quite a fiery, flashy costume of yours. So speak on it.
Yes, I love dark stuff, as y'all call it. But Halloween, I am a little bit different than Miss Ocean. I don't like the commercialized version of anything pagan. Just put that out there like that. I feel like the commercialized version of Halloween is not accurate. You don't dress up as these different things to celebrate the spiritual world. That's not what that was for. It was specifically a time of 3 days that allowed spiritual workers to connect to the other side. It's sacred. It's hallowed. It's supposed to be separate from everything else. And so that's why I love it. Now, I will dress up because I like to, but at the same time, how can I put this? I'd rather dress up than be sky clad when I'm working my rituals. Put it that way. We muted.
Oh, my bad. I was just talking the whole time, but thanks you for sharing that. But I'm gonna get to the comments real quick and go to the next question. And Risa Neal says, I want to see cheeks clapping. Yes, just like I want to hear birds chirping. And Quantum Love is speaking of the spell of seduction and the eyes to the soul. I agree. With this, you have no other choice but to peer into the eyes of someone's soul. And then also, she says, yes, Lord, don't send my body to the altar. Do graveside. I don't want to be a sacrifice. I'm just saying I know he is real. So yeah, some people have different ways that they want to have their spirit leave this earth. You know, some people want to be buried under the earth. Some people saying, hey, scatter me across the ocean or leave me on your fireplace mantle. And I just want to touch on one more thing before we go back to Miss Dean, because Miss Oshun was talking about the butterfly effect. And some of y'all might not know, but the premise of it is a minor change, such as flapping of wings by a butterfly, can create a phenomenal change. So there's minor things that you can do in your life that will create a monumental change. It seems like a drop in the bucket, and then next thing you know, you look up and the bucket is full. But if you just revere it or regard it as only a drop and think that the drop is meaningless, then you're doing yourself, your goal, your aspirations a disservice. You know what I mean? So if anyone's have ever had a leaky faucet or leaks in their house, yeah, you'll just hear the bucket and then you wake up and the bucket is full. So you see that it wasn't inconsequential. So if you relate that to some things that you're doing in your life, maybe your level of fitness, a butterfly effect could be you're starting off doing 10 push-ups, 10 or 20 push-ups a day. That may not seem like a lot, but 20 push-ups is more than 0 push-ups. And now you've done 20 push-ups a day for 20 days straight. You're starting to see results based off of a minor contribution, which will motivate you and inspire you to do a lot more than that. So that's essentially the butterfly effect. described in a nutshell. But I'm going to go to the
Oh wait,
next.
can I
Go
talk
ahead.
about the Halloween?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, my bad.
All
I
right.
just left. I just left the shaman out of it. My bad, bro. You get no love because you know the my bad. You know why, Stan? You know why I left it out? Because I was you. Let me show you. There. This is why I left you out of it. Because I want to see some cheeks clapping in the sorry brother. Don't want to see your cheeks clapping, but
No,
Mr.
no, no, no.
Oshun
There'll
and
be no cheese tapping over here. I'm good.
okay, good. Okay, sorry, brother. That's
No, no,
why.
no. It's all good.
Go ahead.
So Halloween for Haitians culturally, I don't know how it is in other Caribbean uh, islands. We were taken out of school. It was seen as a serious holiday. It was not seen as fun and games. Later on, we were allowed to go to certain parties, but we weren't allowed to dress up. Um, because we'll see it as like it's the holiday for like it's the one time of the year that you could be yourself, aka lugawu, lugawu, English
Hold
translation.
on, Stan. Hold on. You
Yeah,
saying
go
it's the
ahead.
one time of the year you can be yourself? You supposed to be
Okay, so
yourself the whole
listen,
year,
but
right?
here's the thing. Lugawu, a lugawu is a skinwalker. So it's the one time of the year they could be the monster that they are, that they had to hide all year long because they've been around people. So that
Oh,
was the whole thing.
that makes a lot of sense. And Quantum said it's a sacred time, not for fun and games. Is that pretty accurate?
Yes, but then it turns into also a time of change because it's harvesting time. So so many holidays that comes in around that, not holidays, but important things that comes around that time of year. And also for a lot of people, I don't know if people notice or they probably ignored it, but around that time of year, there's a cold chill, and that's like death normally comes around this time of year. So that's why a lot of times around September through January is really hard for people because there's a lot of things like you're thinking about the dead, or somebody is dying around that time of the year. So it's difficult for a lot of people around that time of the year. So people are more spiritually sensitive.
Okay, cool. So before I move on, Rush looks like he says Lagawu is a witch or a warlock. What you think about that?
Yeah, again, different Haitians have different sayings for Lugawu. I'm not.
Okay.
I agree with them. Like it's so much stuff that comes out of it.
So
It
you're
was
saying there's
just
not
like
one specific definition for Lugawu?
no, because it's always for my auntie. She'll say one thing. For this another Haitian I meet, they'll say another thing. Um, it's one of those things where I had to be an adult, and then it was like my choice to celebrate Halloween. Which then it was like, okay, the first costume I got was a vampire, and that didn't go too well with my parents. So they're like, "Oh, you back to necromancy again, huh?" But it was.
Oh my God.
But the thing about it, I had a widow's peak, so I already was Blackula anyway.
Oh wow, yeah.
So I had a widow's peak,
You
and
can't
that's why I
escape that
picked
once you
it.
got a widow's peak.
You know what I'm saying? It was either that. I mean, growing up in school, elementary, everybody used to call me the Black Eddie Monster because they thought I was a werewolf. So.
Hey Stan, your childhood was kind of rough. Huh?
It was just me. There's a lot of Haitians that's gone through it. We'll go through it, and there's a crazy part about it. Like the church will have a substitute for it, and for me, it was trippy because the Day of the Dead was big for Catholic Church. So I'm like, wait, this doesn't make no sense. You beat me if I sneak off to school on the 31st, so I could like meet up with my friends and do regular stuff, but you're forcing me to go to church services from November 1st to 3rd.
Come on now.
This doesn't make any sense. It's one of those things like it just didn't make any sense. Like you say one thing and we're doing something else, as opposed to let's do the whole thing.
That's what I'm talking about. Do the whole thing and do it right.
And then explain everything, and then that's it. But when you do pick a Halloween, like Oshun said, it does represent who you are on the inside. So I've been very, picky of what I wear because I don't want those spirits on me. So I won't wear like, Freddy Krueger or anything like that. Because the person who I am, I already know I don't want to embody that because I'm not a regular person. If I was regular, like, oh yeah, I'll be Freddy Krueger this year or, Jason. But knowing what I know, I'm just not going to do it. It doesn't help.
But you don't need to be Freddy Krueger because you already got the Widow's Peak. You can just be. You feel me? You already got a costume. Why you bring?
You know what? If you go on my page and you see some of my childhood pictures, yeah, I look like that.
Stan, is that you?
I was hairy. I was definitely hairy.
Yikes! Shout out to
and
Stan.
not to howl.
Oh.
Stan, you did that howl.
That was good.
I know that sounds like a little too good.
But look, I want to bring life to people. So people have been like, oh my God, they preaching stuff. That's scary. Look, everybody that mourned the dead, I don't know if you notice or not, there are times where you feel like that person's in the room with you, but a lot of times you don't turn your head because you're scared you're going to lose that person.
Mm-hmm.
Like, don't ignore that.
Right.
Like you have a connection. Like, you don't need to pray that out. That's a gift from God.
Right.
You're not by yourself. And for people who don't believe in this stuff, well, guess what? Have you ever noticed that they build more condos, but don't build more cemeteries?
Mm.
All right, let's go to the next question.
All right, stand with the little mic drop. I got you. Okay, so we coming right to the dean. So, how do you believe that magic works, and what are the underlying principles or forces that you think are at play?
Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, to keep it simple, like I like to do, I think magic works by intention, by focused attention and directing energy for a desired outcome. So think of law of attraction. You have to know the end before you even start. You have to be clear on what it is that you are seeking or what it is that you want to manifest. And then you use the principles to make it happen. The underlying forces, I feel like, are shown throughout nature, the natural laws. And I feel like this is why this is why gods and goddesses were labeled to represent one central God figure, to demonstrate the different aspects of the oneness. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. Ms. Oshun, let me ask you, because I know you are very detailed with your answers. So how do you believe magic works, and what are the underlying principles or forces that you think are at play? And, we already discussed like the evil, dark, good magic aspects that some people believe, so some people believe that there's a kind of like a hidden hand, like some other superior force that's almighty controlling everything. And some people think, the magic is up to the individual. So just the question one more time is, how do you believe that magic works? What are the underlying principles or forces do you think that are at play?
Okay, so I don't want to say necessarily what I believe per se, right? Because that's really subjective. However, in my experience, I look at it like this, right? Look, take a piece of paper, right? A white piece of paper. It's on a 2D plane. It's all white, off corner to corner. It's all white. Now, ask yourself, where is God, right? Like, let's suppose you say, okay, that piece of paper is all of reality, right? I would say, well, where is God? If you point to any place on the paper, you failed the test, because God is neither in any specific point. To say God is here means God is not over there. And we know God is not a specific thing that can be in one place, right? So God is God on in there or not there, right? So what you have to understand is God is everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You have to understand that, and that's not something I can articulate in words. That has to sit on you, and you have to really understand that from within yourself, how to be everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Now, the reason why I say that is this. The reason why, when you set your intention, right, where your intention is coming from and what is connected to is the same concept. You can affect something happening on another planet with your intention. Why? Because between your intention and reality, there is no distance, meaning you are everywhere and nowhere at the same time. Now, you can't feel it because you can't, like, right now, throw a rock on Mars. That's like, some people are like, well, I'm on Earth. How can I throw a rock on Mars? However, reality is set up a certain way so that it's much like the government, where nobody has ultimate power, right? And that's how we're set up. We can't, like, pick up a rock on another planet with our hands and we're here on Earth, right? However, our intention can influence something else to pick up a rock and throw it on Mars. And the deeper your sensitivity is to that, the more powerful you are with it. This is why some people, like shamans, priests, priestess, different sorcerers, reason why people are afraid of them is because they know what these people do in private can affect people miles away, thousands of miles away, all because of intention. Now, in science, right, because everybody loves to go to science, we see examples of twins, for instance, right, always being connected. No matter how far away they are, whether they've met each other, they're always connected. It's like they're always connected, and what one does affects the other. What one thinks, one affects the other, and they could have never met each other, right? It like never known each other, basically. Yet they're affecting each other on different parts of the planet. So, we only have been on our planet. We haven't been across the universe per se, right? However, the concept is still the same. So when you talk about magic, right, your intention is connected to everything. This is why you have power. This is why you have dominion, as the Bible says, over things. When the Bible talks about, man being given dominion, right? Man, you got to understand that to be given something means you didn't have it at first and you were given that, right? So when it talks about being given, it's not necessarily saying, well, you didn't have it in the beginning and now you do have it. It's about understanding and talking about the names of the animals. We're talking about we're not talking about physical animals here. That's not what we're talking about. But the Bible is good at coding what I call high magic. It's saying, God gave you dominion over the earth, something physical, and taught you names of animals. And you think, are we talking about zoo animals? Like the ones we pet? Or are we talking about something else that the animals are representative of? Right? So it's like, what we're talking about here is when you are in the understanding that you are not in your head. You don't exist in your body. You exist outside your body too, but you operate from within this central region that you think is in the middle of your head, looking out your eyes. This is nothing but you in an avatar someplace else. You're not really here. You just have access to here. So therefore, you are everywhere and nowhere. So yes, you can affect things that's not part of your circle, things that is a part of your circle. But if you don't know it, then you won't affect it. Let's say you won't be effective in your life. But when you know it, and it's not a matter of belief, this is when you find yourself being the most powerful. And honestly, in your older years, at least in my experience, you find yourself not necessarily needing as much magic as you would think, because you understand what magic truly is. And therefore, or after a time, you don't need to even do rituals because you understand how magic really works, and you don't need the physical paraphernalia to actually do a ritual. Those things help you through rituals, right? Because they represent your subconscious mind, and it helps guide your intentions and that energy that you're working up. However, you don't necessarily need it, but it takes time to work yourself up to that degree of knowledge that where you can basically command reality from just your intention. You don't have to physically do anything. And so this is where I feel like when we talk about understanding what magic is, to a degree, you'll never really know. But to understand how it works, it's just to understand, like, Dean just explained, there's a connection, there's a oneness there, and you have to understand that oneness, and you have to know it. You can't believe in it. You have to know it, and that's something that only you can accept and walk yourself through. No one else can teach you or give it to you. Like it's honestly earned, to be honest with you. So it's like that's how I would explain it, because again, we talk about things that it's on a different level where words don't really explain it. We're using words to communicate on this apparatus right now, but I can't, like, for instance, I can't explain to you what when you're in a sexual activity and you ejaculate, right? I can't put that into words and say this is how it feels. One has to know that feeling. You have to be human and know that to understand that moment. I can't tell it to you in words. I just can't. So, I mean, to a degree we can speak about it, but then to a degree we have to know about it to beyond the words. But that's how I would put it, lightly.
Okay, cool. I like the detail and precision when it comes to your answering. And Stan, I'm gonna come straight to you. I definitely got to get you to chime in on the next one. But did you want to touch on this specific one before I go to Mr. Best as well?
Yes.
Okay, cool. So let me just repeat the question for you. And that question is, how do you believe that magic works? What are the underlying principles or forces do you think that are at play?
So I know how it works for me. I don't know how it works for other people, so I only could focus on me. I know that for me, I can't use it for myself. It doesn't work out. But it works better for me to use it for someone else. So like people always say, something weird always happens when I'm around, and either they get blessed or they get a lesson learned or they feel at ease. It works. And so I just know for me, like, it's just like I'm just there to serve others, and I just keep it at that. Now I know like other people will try to get more, and they'll go deeper into the art, and that's not what I'm about. So it's more like I just use what God gives me, and I don't go beyond that, and just honor myself by what he gives me and how I use it. And that's it.
Okay, cool, man. Thank you. Very concise answer. And then it looks like we are joined by none other than Mr. Best. You there, bro?
Man, why you always say that? I am here, bro.
I said the same thing to everybody else, bro. So shit,
I'm here, dog. I'm here. Shout out to you, B-Eazy. I'm sorry I missed you on Sports Stream, dog, for real.
I mean, cause now that you said that, now I gotta hit you with one of these. Hold up, real quick. Let me find it, because we had to make sure it's a lot of trolls out there, bro. So
wait a damn minute. Wait a damn.
I said, hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Nope. Dovii, no provii. Trust but verify.
I trust your brother, but we ain't nothing wrong with verification.
Hey, shout out to the Hold On movement. You know what I'm saying? Me, Riggs, Lady E, all the Hold On movement. You know what I mean? Hold on, verify and hold on. You know what I'm saying? But yeah, man. Salute to B-Eazy, man. Twin was good. Stan was good. Listen, At the end of the day, you know what I'm saying? There are things in our reality that we cannot perceive nor understand fully. Because a lot of things, the reason why we can't understand and perceive it fully is because we are, we're dumbed down, whether it's through, a lot of it's through our food, it's through our technology, it's through a lot of things. So we can't connect to those things that are the most high or factored in the most high. You know what I'm saying? So when it comes to understanding the other side of the world and using magic and things of that nature, and no quantum, I'm not gonna come up and tell everybody they ain't shit. I'm not doing that right now. That was the other panel. But with that being said, right? You know what I mean? Like, this is my thing. We as a people have been so removed from our real spirituality that a lot of times when things are happening in real time, we can't even see it. You know what I'm saying? Because we've been so diluted. There's been so many things that have been done to us. We've been so lied to and misinformed and miseducated about spirituality as a whole. So when we see spirituality or when people speak about spirituality, sometimes we may get frustrated or I don't want to hear about that, or we'll get all in our feels about it instead of really taking the time to understand the importance of spirituality. As they say, if you control the mind, the heart, and the spirit, you can control the man. The physical part is just easy. You know what I'm saying? So we have to have a fully understanding of what spirituality is, you know what I mean, what it means, whether it's, what they call magic or magique, you know what I mean, voodoo or hoodoo, Christianity, Islam, whatever, Judaism, whatever it is, whatever side of the spectrum you're on, you have to have a clear understanding of what you're into. And most of us, we don't have a clear understanding because, one, we don't have all the accurate information. You know what I mean? If we look at even something as clear as the Bible or even the Quran or whatever, you know what I'm saying? We're given text that has been passed down, that has been basically stepped on and basically, misused, and we're not getting the full understanding of this text or of any of these things that we're reading. It's filtered. So if you're looking outside and you see a filtered view of the sky, you're not going to know what the weather condition is like because I'm giving you a filtered view. I'm not giving you the full view, but once I open up the window, I move those blinds out, you're able to see a full view. You can determine what type of weather is going on outside. You know what I mean? Or you can kind of estimate what kind of weather is turning on, how the weather is outside. But if I'm not giving you a full view of things, then of course you're going to look at when people do certain type of spirituality or certain type of things. When it comes to spirituality, you're going to look at it as dark or evil because we don't have a full understanding. We're only given 66 books of the Bible. There's really 88. So you're missing 20 some odd books that you could be reading and understanding that can give you clear understanding. You know what I'm saying? So that's what it is, man. And a lot of times what I tell people is that unless you really do your research, and even when you do your research, understand that there's certain things you're not going to be given. You know what I mean? Because people have lost their life over this information. They have lost their life trying to find out what's really behind and what's to come and what we have, what we have done and what we are going to do in that next step. You know what I'm saying? When we transcend. I don't call it death, I call it transcendence. Because to me, you never die, you just transcend. You know what I mean? But yeah, and I have some more stuff I'm gonna build on next week. You know what I mean? You know what I mean, on my show. You know what I mean, next Sunday. Quantum know what it is. I already told her. So yeah, we about to build something real crazy. You know what I'm saying? So, you know what I mean? Yeah. So B-Eazy definitely setting the tone with this one, man. Salute.
Yeah, for sure, man. And this is just one of many, because it was dope because we were able to align the schedules. We were supposed to do it a little bit earlier. And I definitely want to be respectful of everyone's time, but this is something that's so heavy, so valuable, and actually the information being dropped is actually invaluable that of course we can't pack it all into one episode. So it's definitely going to be a segment going forward because I got some heavy hitters in this magic industry dealing with Miss O'Shawn and the Dean of Esoteric, and then of course Stan the Man. So yeah, and actually I'm going to go straight to the Dean and then back to Miss O'Shawn because this one I really want y'all to dig into, and it's saying, what roles do spirits demons or other entities play in your practice, and how do you interact with them? Do you speak with the demons? Are you speaking with angels, God, the Most High, vampires, werewolves? What type of other entities are you speaking with? So let me clearly just state the question one more time. What role do spirits, demons, or other entities play into your practice, and how do you interact with them? And this one is for the Dean of Esoteric Studies first. Go ahead, young lady.
Okay, so I interact with spirits, or if we want to call them energies, by simply accepting, first of all, accepting that these are real in my reality. And then what I do from there is I study that energy. I study it to see what is this thing and how can I use it to my benefit. And once I understand that, then I'm able to, I don't want to say call it in, but I'm able to work with that energy and do what I need to do based on what it is there for. So I'm trying to be
Don't try
not too revealing with my stuff now. This is sacred stuff to me.
Okay. I know what you're saying. I had
Yeah.
already told you don't
Yeah,
have
you
to
did.
reveal anything that's too uncomfortable. And I should have given you a crash course on how to give you the political answers, so
Yeah,
you
you
can say
should have.
you can say what you need to say, but not revealing too
Okay, I'm
much.
gonna put it this way. I know how to work with these entities to not become afraid of them. So if I call in something that would be considered evil, I'm not afraid. I know what it is. I know how to work with it, and I'm the ruler of that while it's in my presence. If that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. It's essentially like everything, right? They say make the money, don't let the money make you, right?
Right.
Control the energy, don't let the energy control you. It's the same logic, but you're applying it in a different magic, right? You may be adroit with being a magician or sorceress, but that's a skill and a tool that you have, right? The skill is not supposed to usurp you as a human being or as an individual, right? You know what I mean? Because you're
Right.
supposed to be practicing it. It's not supposed to be practicing you,
Right. So
right?
I don't become possessed by any of the things that I work with. Um, think of it like King Solomon. King Solomon was all about wisdom. And so because he didn't pray for material things and all of that, when he got wisdom, he got everything. And so with that comes power. So he was the ruler of demons, and he created the lesser keys and the greater keys, the lesser magic and the greater magic, the lower magic, the higher magic. So that's what I focus on.
All right, cool. And what about you, Ms. Oshun? Let me read the question one more time for you. What role do spirits, demons, or other entities play in your practice, and how do you interact with them? And it seems like you were fighting some demons when you were in your dark place. So I would love to know how you interact with them. Do you fight with them? Of course, you don't need to reveal as whatever information that you deem necessary, and you don't have to be super personal. You can give a generalized answer. So I'm not asking you to give anything that you're uncomfortable saying, but just one more time, it's what role do spirits, demons, or other entities play in your practice, and how do you interact with them?
Okay. Let me ask you, have you seen a movie called A Beautiful Mind?
I have not. Have anyone else on the panel seen that movie?
I believe so. It sounds familiar, but
Mind?
It's
I
called
haven't.
Say it again.
it's called A Beautiful Mind. Have you seen the movie?
Have you seen that, Stan? It's called A Beautiful Mind.
Yes, I have.
Okay. So just to kind of give us a real harsh recap of that movie, right? There was a really brilliant guy in college, and essentially, there were things and people that existed that we see on screen that only existed in his mind. It didn't exist in reality. And what happened?
Hold on, Miss Oshun. Let me just read the little quick description and you can pick it up from there. So, a beautiful mind depicts the real life story of a mathematician and a Nobel Prize winner, John Nash. While navigating the normal course of life, Nash is diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, a mental illness where one experiences a series of splits from reality and paranoia. Okay,
Mm,
okay.
I
Mhm.
think I saw that.
Yeah. So movie, I love the movie the way they depicted it because it it took it from the disease to how everyone actually is inside of that mind frame, right? Whereas if you pay attention very closely to the movie never depicted anything that you would see as real if you didn't pay close attention to what was happening. For instance, there was a little girl that he was familiar with in the yeah, that he was familiar with in the story, and she frequently came inside of the frame and she ran, she frolicked, she talked to him. She was just a part. She was just an actor in a film. But if you paid close attention, right? She never actually interacted with anything physical. She ran through like a whole like like when you at the park and you run through a bunch of pigeons, they fly away. She ran through pigeons, but nobody caught that the pigeons didn't fly away. She just ran through them frolicking, and people just didn't understand in the movie until later on that this little girl was just something in his mind, right? And there was other people that existed in the movie, but when you paid close attention, these things only existed in his mind, not the actual physical world. But it looked like it, and you're not aware of the details. I say that to say this: he was dealing with demons, right? That only he could see. And in real life, right? When we see someone that is reacting to reality as if it's outside of themselves, yet the only thing that they're reacting to is their own mind and they don't know it. This is what we call a demon, right? When someone is reacting to something they think is outside of themselves and it's pleasant to them, right? And we can see that they're growing as a person, things are happening good in their life. We call this a good spirit. However, it's the same thing. Demons are not different from spirits and angels, for real, for real. They're not. There's no difference. There is nothing outside of yourself here. There's just you. Really.
Are
There is
you saying
just
that there's good demons?
no, no, no. Demons. Demons are angels, and angels are demons. We say good demons, bad demons, based on how we feel. But in reality, a mirror is a mirror. If there's something in front of you and you're afraid of it, truth be told, you're only afraid of it because you're ignorant to what you're looking at. You are only looking at a reflection of yourself. That's what the demon is. It's a reflection of you, whether you like what you see or you don't. If you see an angel, that's a reflection of yourself. If you see both, that's a reflection of yourself. And how you deal with it is the lesson that you incarnated here to understand. Some people will come into this life and will never they'll live lifetimes going through the same lessons. Some people won't. But at the end of the day, when people say, well, how do you deal with demons? I agree with Dean that the only way to deal with a demon, an angel, or anything in front of you is to sit down and ask the question, what is this? And when you ask the question, what is this? Pay attention to your surroundings because the answer will show itself to you because that's how reality is set up. The moment a student exists, a teacher simultaneously exists as well. Any question asked, the answer is there. So it's like you can't deal with anything until you understand it. And to understand the thing, you have to study a thing. Meaning part of the beauty of life is the middle part, the part where we're going through figuring out what is this, what isn't this, how it works, how it doesn't work. That's what you have to do. And before you can say, well, okay, there's something that needs to be fixed within myself because I'm dealing with a demon, I'm dealing with an angel, I'm dealing with whatever. You have to know what you're dealing with. Now, again, now we're talking about, man, know thyself. That's all that is. It's like, now you have to know yourself. Now you have to dig into the deep, dark trenches of you, which you probably have never dug into if you're dealing with that. However, the point of it is for you to ask the question, learn, and then put into play what you have learned. And then you'll come into another portion of your life where you're not dealing with that, you're dealing with something else. So, for me, my understanding in my experience when it comes to demons and angels is not to pay attention to whether or not you're dealing with a demon or an angel. Pay attention to the fact that you're looking at a mirror within yourself. That's what you're dealing with. And I grew up under parents that dealt with demons in their life, and they always thought that I was dealing with a demon because I could see the demon in them. But truth be told, they were seeing a reflection of themselves, and when they saw me, it just reminded them that that demon was real. So they associated the demon with me, called in priests to have a demon, let's say, blessed out of me, right? But in reality, there was no demon in me. The demon was in them. Same thing that happened to me years later. I'm in the store, well, the quote unquote witchy store, and a girl comes in and she's saying she's
Hold
buying.
on, I can't just gloss over that. What store you was in?
The store where you buy stuff when you want to do rituals. Right. That's
Okay, carry on.
so I was in line, and a lady came in and she was buying up all the sage. Okay, like all the sage was in her hand, and she was talking to a guy that was in line, and she was saying, "There's a ghost in my house. There's a spirit in my house, and it's unclean, and I'm trying to get it out." And something came over me, and I don't know why I felt the need to say this, but I just blurted out, "The demon isn't in your house; it's in you." And so I told her when I said that, because I kind of felt embarrassed, I said, let me explain. Like, because it just blurted out, like, the demon isn't in your house, it's in you. And I think
Hold on, was you possessed?
Hey.
No, here's the thing. In a sense, yes. And in a sense, when that happens, you can't control it. But she needed to hear that. And I don't know why, because and later on she explained, and I understood it, that she had a certain lover that she felt left a spirit on her. And I could pick up on the fact that she had been involved in certain sexual activity that left a certain energy on her, and she was trying to get it off, and she didn't understand the energy is not in the house. It's not a ghost. That's not what this is. Okay. What it is no matter what house you in, you're experiencing the energy that you created. So the energy that you're trying to get rid of, stop trying to burn sage. It's in you. There's no amount of sage that can get rid of that demon in you. You have to sit down and ask that question and interrogate that part of yourself and look at it for real and not be afraid of looking at you. And so she still bought the sage, right? But in my opinion, she walked away with a little bit of knowledge further, that when you're trying to get rid of a demon, right? You can't get rid of no demon if you like Dean said, if you don't know what you're dealing with. If you come into it thinking it's a ghost in your house and burning sage, guess what? You're gonna feel like magic isn't real, because that ghost still gonna be bothering you even with that sage going. You're gonna think it's the sheer devil after you, when in reality it's you. It's really you. And remember what I said, you don't exist in your head, you exist everywhere. Like, you are part of every single physical thing in this universe. So where you think you are, you're not really there. So when you think you're being tormented by a demon or a spirit, you're not being tormented. It's just a part of yourself that you need to explore, and it's chaotic. And it's unruly, and therefore it's causing problems. So the thing is, don't be afraid of who you are. Take a look into that mirror and figure that out. And I'm telling you, I can't tell you what to ask, because that's something that only spirit can guide you in. But like Dean said, you have to ask. You have to be patient and sit down and study. And by study, I don't always mean pick up a book per se, but you at least have to have the mindset that you're open to receive the answer wherever it comes from. Because it might come from a book, it might come from a dream, it might come from any source, but you won't know until you ask that question. So that's how I see demons and angels and all of that.
Okay. And I got a live view of Lola's.
You know what?
Live view of Lola's living room. Shout out to Miss Osha. Hey, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying.
You know what? You a mess. He said he's a live view.
Go ahead, Stan. We gotta hear what your answer is. What roles do spirits, demons, or other entities play in your practice, and how do you interact with them as a shaman?
So this was a tough one, because this didn't help me out growing up in church. And now in our culture, people do worship or call forth demons and angels. And I believe I was at like 8 or 9 at the time in Sunday school. And I told the teacher, like, well, I'm not going to call a demon or an angel because they don't like me. And then she said, like, why they don't like you? And I told her, well, God always forgive me, but he never forgive them. So how I'm going to call on something that, you know, I got more favor from God than they do. And that did get me in trouble in church. So that, you know, and there's a couple of things that growing up, you know, I just left another church as an adult. There were some things that I was aware of, and I say, like, the Holy Spirit is there, and I that's what I'll call on, because the Holy Spirit will pray even when I don't feel like praying, and I understand that part. And I do know, like, angels and demons do come forth in everything else. But I know for me personally, and I just want people to understand what everybody in this panel is saying is true. But we all have our own gifts, our own ways that we have to honor. There's not one person above another person. So for my life, I can't call forth for anybody because it's not going to work for me. Because at a young age, I understood that I have this free will that they don't. So to call on them to serve me is not going to be nice.
So hold on, let me ask you this, Stan. Because we understand in every other aspect of society, there is a hierarchy, a social hierarchy, a certain level of social status and stratification, you know what I mean? Like, so celebrities are placed at a higher status than certain civilians. Same thing in military rank, you know, they have generals, corporals, sergeants, etc., etc. In this magical, fantastical, demonic, mythical world, whatever you want to coin it as, is there a certain hierarchy? Like, are demons at the bottom, or at the top, or angels at the top, or is there no such thing as a higher? Same thing with witches, right? Witches, wizards, sorcerers, mages,
and scientists, and poets,
correct,
and singers, and doctors, and teachers.
But I'm saying,
but everybody has a part. Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, everyone has a part. Like, there's God, right? But if there's a God, then why everything else exists? Because everyone has a part. There's a big plan. We haven't even looked at, you know, this stuff that we're doing, and we're not even questioning. We go to space, but we don't look what's in the water. Like, why we're not in the ocean? There's stuff in the water that we don't really understand. We don't really understand that world, but we want to go to space. We do cloning, and we never asked the question about souls. Is that the same soul, or that soul being reincarnated? There's so much stuff that's going around us, and it's there for us every day. And that's what I'm just saying. It's like God has a plan. Everyone plays their part. Angel, minister, demon, sorcerer. Everybody has a part.
So do you think there could be demons, wizards, sorcerers, shamans of the actual under ocean world? Because typically what people are talking about right now is in maybe the physical world, spiritual world, but based on what you're saying and what scientists have said, they said more than 80% of the ocean is what they call unmapped, unobserved, and unexplored. So we don't know if there are some type of water demons down there or some type of water wizards. What you think about that, Stan?
There are people from the Marines, the military, that have retired and will never even touch the ocean from the shore. So there's like we talk about, everybody's scared like those physical world, but we got other stuff, and we know everything. You don't know everything. More and more animals are being discovered, and the more animals that's being discovered, like we always see, because me and you always exchange what we see on IG and also YouTube when they bring out new animals, and it's like, wait a minute, I think Pokemon is a real thing. There's there's animals that we do not understand at all. We don't understand this world at all like we think we do. And you look at AI, and that's another thing too, which we all assume that is just a programming, but we're creating life out of numbers, equations, and we're making another entity. Now, if that's not some form of necromancy, witchcraft, and making a golem, now keep in mind, golems are, it's a magical principle. Everybody has a golem. When you're a kid, you have a blanket that was a comfort blanket. When you have a, what do you call that stuff, mental health day, you do things that comfort you, or you just, you find your favorite pillow, you have golems. There's a place for this where we need to put everything together instead of seeing everything bad or categorize it as spooky and weird. We just have to accept it, because there is, we're looking for aliens, and we have creatures underneath the sea. So why isn't this something that's not real?
And speaking of that, let me just speak on the golem part a little bit, because people are like, what is a golem? Well, the definition, could be various definitions, but a generalized one is a creature formed out of lifeless substance such as dust or earth that is brought to life by ritual incantations and sequences of Hebrew letters. That's just a generalized one. Some people from the Caribbean or Jewish background may have a slightly different take on it, but that is a generalized discussion. And when you're
go back to that definition. What exactly is Siri, Echo, and what else we have? Siri, Echo, and Google. Lifeless what? That's formed by letters.
A lifeless substance. Mm-hmm.
And we use science to make it come alive.
Yeah. But it's also, it says also brought to life by ritual incantation. So it seems like there's kind of some chanting in there as well. You know what I mean? So I think there's a little bit of conjuring in it as well. You know what I mean? So
yeah.
And Stan is, like I said, Stan is part merman, so stay tuned for that. We will be having a discussion, and I would love for the ladies to be a part of it too, because Miss O'Shawn, you do look like you got a little bit of mermaid in you too, so I think that would be dope too, that we could touch on the unexplored and unobserved part of the ocean. And I actually want to get to at least, because I got a long list of questions, but we only at question number 5. So I'm going to just make this the last question of this episode. And then we're going to do another episode once all of our times align, because this was a fire panel, not just people bickering, arguing back and forth, saying how masculine you are and how dusty another person is. We actually are getting somewhere with the conversation, and that's what we're here to do, you know what I mean? And shout out Von, Brian, and Razik, who has entered the chat. The intellectual soapbox came up for a little bit. So thanks a lot, bro. I definitely appreciate that. So let's get to the last question before we wrap up this question and give our final remarks. And we will have y'all stay tuned for another one. So let me see. This one says, how do you see magic as being related to spirituality or religion? And what connections do you draw between the two? I want to go to Miss O'Shun first on that one. So let me just repeat that real quick so we're very clear. The question is, how do you see magic as being related to spirituality or religion? And what connections do you draw between the two? Are they directly linked and correlated, or are they completely separate and should be treated as such? Miss Oshun, please take it away.
I'm going to say, depending on who you are, is whether or not you should treat it as a thing that is one or separate. Because sometimes if you separate it, it might make better sense. But at other times, if you don't separate it, it'll make more sense to you. But that is up to the individual and their specific walk in both. I will say that for me, the what connects it for me, to just put it mildly so that it'll be understood, is within both religion, spirituality, and magic. The core string that's running through all of them is the ability to be sensitive enough to listen to that voice, whatever you believe that voice is that guides you or that doesn't guide you but allows you to see. If you're not sensitive enough to hear it, and meaning your mind can't be quiet enough, your heart can't be still enough to feel it, then you'll be aimlessly walking, not knowing who you are or where to go without a purpose. You hear some people say, who are both maybe strictly religious, or strictly outside of religion as far as spirituality is concerned, saying that God told me, or I heard, or I was led to. You can't speak like that if you're not sensitive enough to hear these things, and these things are so slight, meaning like you just don't wake up just knowing. It's something that needs practice. I know when I was coming up, my mother used to speak about being able to hear when God is speaking to you, and when God is not speaking to you, and that's something you need practice at. You have to decipher between your instinct and your intuition. This is part of the learning curve with that. So this is what's kind of moving through both, or all those three things, and that connects them. Because whether or not you believe in religion or you follow religion or whatever, at the end of the day, you're no different than someone who is in religion, because your walk is the same in that everybody takes two steps, like 1 2 1 2. No matter what direction you're going, your steps are the same, meaning the rules are the same, and thus you will abide by them. So I would put it there to kind of like put it mildly so everybody can understand as far as like how I see what is the same. Now, what may be different is the interpretation of it, which Stan mentioned in terms of all of our opinion about these things based on our studies and experience. They're all true, and that's something that if you follow occultism, you understand up front that occultism isn't one thing. There is no lies. It's only your reality that you must adhere to. So, I can't sit and say that someone, praying to Jesus is not getting their prayers answered. They are getting their prayers answered if in their experience they can see that, and they know that, and they can rely on that, and they can turn it on at will. That is not to say, well, something's wrong with them because they're not practicing E5. Like, that's not what that is. So, it's something you have to understand. But again, you can see it separate. There's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, you can also understand it as all one thing, just a different resonance of energy at different times. But I see it from both ends.
Cool. Thank you so much. And Mrs. Dean of Esoteric Studies, let me go ahead and repeat the question just so we are completely clear. How do you see magic as being related to spirituality or religion, and what connections do you draw between the two?
Okay. So magic as religion, I feel like that part is based on the ritualistic, habitual, repetitious devotion that comes with being spiritual. And spiritual is just the hidden, dark, inner work that you do alone. So like some people have a prayer closet. So the things that you do repetitiously in your prayer closet, that is magic to me. And they both go hand in hand. I don't separate them, even though people do, but I don't separate them.
Okay, cool. Thank you for that concise answer. And we going over to Stan the Shaman. How do you see magic as being related to spirituality or religion, and what connections do you draw between the two?
There's a connection there. I believe that spirituality is an added bonus, is more like a purpose. And I just want people for Christianity's sake, if you look at 1 Corinthians chapter 12, 4-11, and also 1 Corinthians 13-13, you look at what's the spiritual gifts. And a lot of time we are not taught this stuff. We're taught against it. But it's right there in the Bible. Like, it's just natural for us. Like, God give us these gifts even before we go into a religion organization that it was meant for us to have. And for some of us, we look at other people's gifts and talents and we get jealous and we want their stuff, but it's not meant for us. And so because we're not taught this, I think that's where people separate the two. And it's harder for people to understand, like, no, this is how you're made. But if you don't do like what Lola mentioned before about looking into yourself, and also like what Dean said too, you gotta look into yourself. A lot of, that's called now the shadow work. You gotta do shadow work. And you really gotta be honest with yourself. Like, why do you want this gift? What exactly do you have? And why you don't want that? And do you understand that if you get this gift, what's that entitled for you to do with it? So for you to have discernment or you to see into the future does not mean you're going to win the lottery tickets. I should know, because I gotten people their own lottery numbers they won. I can't win a lottery ticket for myself. It never works. So it's frustrating to see that people become millionaire because of me, but I can't be a millionaire. But I have to be okay with it because it's not for me. And maybe me being a millionaire will have me ignore what's given to me. So I'm at peace with it. All my needs are always met, and I always have anything that I want and everything I need. So I can't complain.
Right.
That's probably because you're a priest, shaman, priest. You walk those lines. So a lot of times those people are not quote unquote successful, because I think it probably will alter you as a servant in the spirit realm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
and I
tell
just
people, and like, I'm not broke. God does. I'm blessed, but I'm not a multi-billionaire or millionaire that help other people do. And I'm okay with it because that's what God made them to do. But I still strive to be the best me that I can be. I'm not like laying down waiting for God to use me. I still have to learn what God given to me. I still have to practice. I still have to obey. I still got to pray. I got to take care of my temple and take care of my family. And there's stuff I still need to do.
yeah,
So I
and
don't
then
want people to go around thinking like, "Oh my God, just no, I need to just give up." Like, no, you're gonna
Thank you.
be good.
I just want to touch on a little bit of what Stan said about the shadow work, and people have heard the term or probably haven't heard the term, and even if you heard the term, they probably didn't appropriately apply or comprehend the definition. But let me just say that shadow work is working with your unconscious mind to uncover the parts of yourself that you repress and hide from yourself. And this can include trauma, parts of your personality that you subconsciously consider undesirable. And anyone can do shadow work on their own. You actually don't need a prescription. You don't really need a therapist. I'm not saying you don't need a therapist. I'm saying you don't need a therapist to do shadow work on yourself. Lola, Dean, and actually all of the panelists have brought up about looking in the mirror. The most people look in the mirror and they see, like I say, look, if you want to see exactly how desirable you are or what you believe about yourself, look at yourself naked in the mirror. Then people start saying, oh, look at the stretch mark. For real. Oh, look, I got love handles. Oh, look, people start being overly critical of themselves. Now, there's some things that when you're looking in the mirror, you just simply can't change. You can't look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm short, I'm going to be taller, but you can look in the mirror and say, hey, I got love handles. I could work on this. Or, hey, my hair is a little frizzy. I could do something about that, right? My breath is stinking or something. I could do something about that.
What?
I'm just saying, sometimes people look in the mirror and they overlook the things that they actually can change, and they fixate and kind of wallow in uh, basically their insecurity, and sometimes they repress it when they're out in public, right? So they try to overcompensate, with jewelry or certain cars. But a lot of that stems from the repressed insecurity that they refuse to do anything about. And them doing something about it is just doing something that further exacerbates the problem, not necessarily helps them mitigate or eliminate the problem. So, Miss O'Shawn, it sounds like you want to say something.
Oh no, I would say that this is what most people that practice occultism in any corner of the world would say is the most important part of occultism, which is that shadow work, that self reflection, that mirror. Because as much as people think that doing rituals, getting things that you want is the highlight of occultism, it is not the highlight. You start realizing that those things you're doing rituals for are the least like important things as it pertains to occultism. And like Stan mentioned, it's like when you get deep into occultism and you start understanding your purpose, why you incarnated here, and you start realizing, okay, for instance, there's certain things in your life that are leftover resonance of other lives, right? And you start feeling yourself pulled towards different things and that you don't understand. It's because where you're at in time space is based on a certain a certain journey that you're supposed to be on, and something you're supposed to do, something specific, and no one can tell you that. You have to figure that out. That's the beauty of life. And so when you get past doing rituals for mundane things, you start realizing that, okay, now you got gifts. Do you know how to cultivate those gifts, and do you understand the cost, like Stan's mentioned, of said gift? sometimes the cost of said gift could be the very demon that we're dealing with, and we don't even understand why. I used to deal with a demon when I was a child, in reference to time. And it's like I didn't understand what that meant, right? But then as I got older, I started realizing that it only seemed chaotic because I didn't understand why it was a part of me. When I understood that and got my life path readings, it made sense why I went through certain things. And now when I encounter that thing, it's my strength. It's no longer a demon, it's my strength. And I actually enjoy it when it shows up. And like saying, it doesn't show up on command. I'm not God. It ain't Disney out here. There's no just waving my hand and stuff happens. That's not real.
No bewitched.
Right? Yeah, no bewitched. But it does. When it does happen, I mean, it's something for me to learn as much as someone else that may be getting something out of that may be blessed. Like, and when I say time, I'll be specific. Um, I used to have dreams and I couldn't understand where I was in the dream. Sometimes I would dream and it seemed like it wasn't my dream. I wasn't in the dream, but it was still a dream. It was weird. When I got older, after I went through that dark night of the soul, it got to the point where I would dream about a future and know who's supposed to be told about it, and I would tell them. But I also was told, beware that when you tell people about futures, they will see you as the problem. So that's my advice. I have to be okay with rejection in truth, because that is the way of the tarot. That's the way of learning. That's what this really is. It's not about other people. It's not necessarily about me, but I had to accept that about this gift. So one time I had a coworker, their children was in trouble, and I had a dream that told me everything that he needed to know. And I told him, no, I'm sorry, I didn't tell him. And the reason I didn't tell him is because I felt embarrassed to say what I knew. So I didn't say anything. Next thing I know, about a day later, after I was supposed to tell him, the phone rang and he ran out the building and he didn't come back for 3 days. And when he finally came back, he told me his children was in trouble, all 5 of them in school, and him and his wife was having problems and had to transfer the children, and it was a big mess. It took me 2 years to work up the nerve to tell him that I knew about it, and I didn't say anything because I was embarrassed that he would see me kind of like as a spooky person and really would kind of think I was weird. And I didn't want to be seen that way at work because it was a coworker. And so, I mean, he said, he it was all good, but I felt a weight on my shoulder that I had to apologize for what I was supposed to do that I didn't do, because that was my gift and I reneged on my own gift. And so I made amends for that. But I realized after that, when those messages come, my job is to give those messages, not worry about how I'm viewed as a result of it. So, that's one of the learning curves I had to endure with this. But again, I had to be like everybody else and just go with it. So that's what I would say. Just don't be afraid of anything. This is not something for you to be afraid of and allow Hollywood to guide your thinking. It's like, if you have never been in a ritual, do not make judgment. If you've never practiced, Islam, right? Don't make a judgment on it. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's just, spirituality is about spirit. It's not about, this mundane idea we have about following rules so that we all won't go to hell. That's not what spirituality is for. So, I say that with all love when it comes to other people that follow other traditions. I feel that all traditions are beautiful, but they have their pluses and their minuses for specific people. So that's what I would say about that.
Cool.
Yeah, and I just want people to know, I want to encourage people to just be aware of their gifts, because that will give you more insight. I remember 10 years ago when I stayed in Oakland, my first apartment, I was nicknamed Wizard. because I had like a shelf full of books, right? So when people came over, they'll say like, "Hey, I need da 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 da," and I'll just go to my shelf. For some sort of reason, I'll just collecting books left and right. And I'm like, "Hey, I think this book is for you." And then that's what, I got nicknamed Wizard, and also I also got nicknamed Jiminy Cricket because there were people that didn't have a consciousness; they just did whatever. But when I was around, I was able to help them and to guide them into the right path. So I believe that all of us are just ignoring gifts that's given to us, and we're just pushing it off to the side so we could be just like everybody else because we don't want to be called upon on those gifts. So don't do it.
Hold on, Stan. I'm glad that you said that because actually I gotta bring up one little thing, and this will segue us to so we can get up out of here appropriately. So just give me 1 second. Hold up. But this kind of touches on what you just said. And if anybody don't know who Carl Jung is, definitely need to look him up. But it says there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. What you got to say to that, man?
That's powerful.
That I ain't gonna lie.
Yes.
I was like, I was gonna bring it up when Miss Oshun was talking, but then Stan, you said the perfect segue, and I definitely want to kind of tie in more, and I'll send y'all some of his writings too. It will be in PDF format, but I just want to read it one more again and let Stan touch in and Miss Dean esoteric, and then I'll bring one more little quote like this, and then we'll just wrap it up. But this is extremely powerful. I don't think people is really comprehending what he is saying here, but there is no coming to consciousness without pain. People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own soul. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. What do you think about that, Stan?
That's true. Because a lot of us are not formed without the fire, and that's the fire of life: disappointment, pain, rejection. Like for me, it was curiosity on like why I was being shamed. There are times I will say a name of a family member that I've never met. These are like people that there was no reason for me to say these names or to know these people or to to like feel like, hey, we shouldn't go here. Where, and it was like I was shamed for like knowing stuff, but I kept on going because even though that kept me, some people were just scared of me because they didn't know like what's up with this kid. But I've learned to be okay with that. Even as an adult now, people could see like, oh man, you're different. And other people come up and like, hey, you have a light. Like no matter what, like don't let anybody dim your light. Like you do have a light. Recently, there's this new anime that's out, and it was just only a poster, and people only saw 8 characters, and I saw 10. And when like it was my friends like, how you see 10? And I point out like, look at that shadow, that's the character, and look what's in the mirror. That's not the other character's reflection. And sure enough, when they got a chance to see it, through other means of non-traditional legal, anime, how anime works. They were able to tell me like, yo, you was right. And it's not the first time this happens to me when I can like see jinns or half demons or other objects that other people will wait for all season to see, but I could see it right away and recognize it. And that's because like I'm okay with it. And it took me a long time to be okay with it.
All right, for sure. All right, Mrs. Dean Dean of Esoteric Studies. We kind of just giving our last commentary. I do have one more, but I would love if you had anything to chime in to this, like what it represents to you. Do you agree with it? Disagree with it? Really, mainly, I wanted you to touch on the part where it says one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And what plenty people do, just like dark magic or anything that's associated with darkness, they say, hey, I want to disassociate myself with the darkness. And it seems to be that he's saying, no, you need to embrace the darkness because the darkness is a part of you. You trying to shun or dismiss the darkness is not even really doing anything to help you become more complete as a person. What are you thinking when you hear and read this?
Consciousness. So I do word association sometimes, and so consciousness to me is God, awareness, knowledge. So you can't come to God if you haven't gone through anything. Basically, you can't come to God without knowing pain, because what we have accumulated in our lives, what we think we know, and all this programming that we have, you have to go through a death of those things. And that's painful. When you go through spiritual awakening, that's painful. It's lonely. It's considered dark. So you have to go through the darkness in order to get to the light. That's the only way that's going to work. So that's how I see that. You can't come to God without going through the darkness. Everything was created in darkness first, and then light was formed. So light is the aftermath. But everybody wants to start at light. Oh, I'm a light being. I'm a light being. I'm a light being. But that's not necessarily the truth. You have to embrace that dark side.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. It's kind of like the people that say, hey, I want a six pack. I want a great body. And then I look at your diet and it's all like donuts, Oreos every day. You know what I mean? You have to go through the rigors of having your muscles sore, being tired, saying like, oh, my gym partner is calling me. I don't want to go, but I still need to go. You're not going to be able to just Netflix and chill every day, eat a bunch of unhealthy food, do a bunch of unproductive activities, and then see the results. So some people are trying to find the light within themselves, but they're trying to avoid the darkness, right? So they're trying to take the shortcut. Here, let me go around the darkness. No, you need to go through the darkness, or otherwise you'll never be the complete version of yourself that you were actually born and destined to be. And I just want to bring up one more visual, and then we'll just do the round robin of just giving the final remarks of this episode, because we are definitely doing another one and a series, a multitude of them to come. So I'm definitely excited and honored to have you panelists up here as guests. And I'm gonna start with Miss O'Shawn, because if you want to touch on anything of the last visual, you can do it in combination with this one, which says you've been criticizing yourself for years and it hasn't worked. Try approving of yourself and see what happens. Too many times people saying, oh, I mean, I don't like my hair, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I don't like the texture of my hair, I got too much acne, oh, my lips are not full. They go through a long list of criticisms about themselves, but they don't have a list of things that they approve about themselves. When you start approving yourself, see what happens. So, Miss O'Shawn, could you tie this one in? If you want to speak on the last one, you could, but this was the last visual that I was going to bring up. And I know since you went through a very dark period of your life, I know that you was criticizing yourself in a harsh way. But when you start approving of yourself, I'm sure that it had a very different outcome based on the results of what you were aspiring for. So go ahead, Miss O'Shawn, take it away.
Well, I'll say this right to the last one. It's just as simple as understanding how the mind works, right? And we typically understand this through how we raise our children. If we tell them only you did something bad, do something right, and we start with just that order. You did something bad. Now do something right, they will interpret the energy we just gave them, which is bad, didn't do. Like it's just bad. So consider this way, right? If I tell you don't think about monkeys, a monkey just appeared in your mind. Why? Because the way the human brain works is not paying attention to the physical words. It's paying attention to the energy in the word. So if I don't want you to think about monkeys, I'm gonna say think about trees, the green leaves of the trees. You see what I'm saying? Now that's slightly different, but now you can't think about monkeys if you have to imagine a tree specifically. And then when I get more specific in terms of the type of tree, again, we're not talking about anything else. Your mind is going to go to what I'm speaking to, not what I don't want you to think about. So when you say, well, let's approve of ourselves first, not even first, period. Now what you're doing is you're moving in the way the mind works. So, and I did that, as you said. It's like I went through things in my life where I felt like a failure, and I felt like I lost the most precious thing I had, which was time. And then after I started realizing the truth of who I was and what this was that I was going through, I started realizing, like deep down, that I had actually won the battle, not the fight, but the battle, because I came out on the other side. Now, granted, yes, I had scars, but I actually won. And I felt that I didn't win because I had to go through it. When the point is for you to go through the darkness, not for you not to reach any darkness. Like, that's not what that is. So, it's all in how you perceive a thing. So I would say when we start telling ourselves, okay, I approve of what I'm doing. I approve of how I look. I approve of my accomplishments. I approve of my relationships. Now we can start focusing on how to better everything that we're talking about, and consequently, other things in life around that will fall in place. Like if you're in a relationship and instead of telling your partner, I don't like when you do such and such, you take out all the I don't likes and you just overly go into what you do like, right? If every day you tell your partner, I like the way you do this, I like the way you look when you put that on, I like that color on you, I like your hair this way, I like, sooner or later people are going to life is going to respond to that energy, and there will be no things that you don't like to say I dislike about you. So if somebody, let's say they have communication issues, right? Instead of saying I don't like the way you communicate, you can find what you do like about them in a conversation regular, and pour that positivity into your partner. And I'm not saying to allow someone to disrespect you, but when you're trying to change something, right, in a sense, through that alchemy, through that energy, through those rituals, essentially you have to understand how reality is set up. So this is what I meant by you don't always need to have, like, the paraphernalia and the chanting and stuff. You'll get to a point after a while where you'll be able to do rituals on people and they don't even know that you're doing rituals on them. I've done rituals on people and they didn't know it, but I had to do that on some so that their subconscious mind wouldn't block the blessing. Because sometimes if you tell someone, hey, I'm doing a money ritual on you so that you'll get this specific job that I know you need, their subconscious mind will say, well, wait, I never had that type of job, I might not be able to get that, I don't know. And then they just totally took away the energy that you built up for them, and now they won't receive that. So sometimes it's necessary, but at the end of the day, you have to move based on how reality is set up. And if you pour the negative energy into yourself through words, your mind is only going to pick up on that, nothing else. You can say, I'm a good person all day. But if your mind is picking up on the doubt that you have to say that to yourself, those words mean nothing. Your subconscious is listening to the doubt in your mind while you're saying I'm a good person. So be clear on what reality is and how it's set up, so that when you approach magic, when you approach ritual, you'll be effective. Because there's times when rituals don't work. There are those times. but it's a learning curve. So that's what I would say as far as that is concerned. That the last one and the one before it, hands down, that is that's that truth right there. Now granted, that statement goes deeper than that, but of course we don't got that kind of time tonight. But that's true.
We don't got that kind of time, but if you do want to touch on it, you can touch on it, or you can just save it for a later date. It's up to you, Miss
Well,
Ocean.
well, the reason why I say it's deeper, right, is because when we talk about there's no coming to consciousness, right, and like Dean said, she said, she sees consciousness as God. Where it says, no man comes to the Father but through the Son. Take the O out, replace it with a U. And what is the Son but fire, which is what? Like the adversary, that cleansing, that pain. You don't come to consciousness except through pain. You don't come to the source without going through the fire, the Sun. So it's like these are play on words, but
And that
essentially,
is true. And even with the sun, right? To truly appreciate the sun, if you appreciate the sun in its totality, it actually is painful. You
right,
think I'm lying? Try to look at the sun. You won't
right,
be able to stand it. Try to stand out there. Your skin start
mm,
peeling and cracking. But
Mhm.
you don't want the sun to go away, right?
right,
And people love summer. When
right,
when it's when it's 100 some degrees, that's a lot of people's favorite like their favorite season, because they could say, look, I know the sun is hot, but what do they say? I'll just put on tanning lotion. So
mm,
they do things to mitigate it. They say the pain is
worth
the
it.
is worth it. Exactly.
Yep. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Did you have anything else that you want to add?
No, I mean, Carl Jean. I mean, he's one of those things, one of those figures
You one of
that,
them guys.
yeah, he's one of them guys where you got to really sit down and go through those liver box recordings. You got to read them
Yeah,
books. You
yeah.
got to get into it.
Yeah, I would say he's kind of like that movie that you brought up earlier. What was it called? Beautiful Mind.
A Beautiful Mind. Yeah.
You can't watch that movie when you over here having side conversations and scrolling through your phone. Those are one of the movies that because then people be like, Miss O'Shawn, what happened? See, you got to
Right.
pay attention to the movie. You
Right.
Carl Jung, when you read his books and his teachings, you need to read it back like 2 or 3 times to fully comprehend it. I seen the movie Friday so many times, but every time I watch it, I see something new that I was like, how did I miss that
Mm-hmm.
on the 10th time? So once you read this over and over, the 5th time that you read it, you're going to interpret something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So,
That's how it is with esoteric understanding. You'll read it, get one lesson. Read it 60 times again, get another lesson. That's just an everyday circumstance when it comes to that. I'll say one movie that every time I watch it, I learn something new is Life of Pi. That movie
oh,
is
I
like
have to
my
check that one
favorite.
out.
Yeah.
That's a good one. I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, you gotta pay attention to that one. You gotta pay attention to the narration. You gotta pay attention to the images. You gotta pay attention to what the images mean. Like the whole storyline put together. Like it's a lot going on, and this stuff in there I didn't even see until maybe the seventh time when I looked out and I was like, "Oh my god, I didn't even see that," and it's right there in the screen. It's so deep, but that's one of the movies that I always go back to at least once a year. I just rewatch it just because, yeah, it's one of my favorite movies. But Life of Pi, that's
Okay, y'all put me on something tonight. A Beautiful Mind, Life of Pi. I still gotta watch Practical Magic, and then I think Stan told me one more. What was that other one with Jonathan Majors in it?
Lovecraft Country is
Oh,
on Tubi.
Have
It's
y'all seen that?
free.
You seen that, Miss O'Shawn?
yes,
oh,
yes.
oh, that's a heavy one.
Mm.
Okay, all right, cool. So Miss Dean, since we
Yeah.
about to wrap it up, I just want to pull this up, and Miss O'Shawn gave a beautiful answer, like she has been doing all night, and this panel has been inspired. Like, I am really appreciative of y'all taking the time to be here. I know that it's late, and that's why I'm trying to wrap it up, because over here is only 10:35 on the West Coast, but so that's early for me. But I know Stan, because he's not like Tommy from Martin. He actually does have a job. I mean, at one point I was questioning. I was like, is Stan a shaman, or is he Tommy? But I've come to the conclusion that he is a shaman that basically is not broke. So shout out to Stan for that. What's up? But Miss Dean, I would love for you to just, because based on what Miss O'Shawn said, I would love for you to pick it up with this, because you were like this too, right? I know there was a point where, let's just say this in the most politically correct terms. I know there was a point in your life where you were unsatisfied with yourself, and you knew that, hey, you know what? I am better than this. I'm the dean of esoteric studies. I hold myself to a higher standard, higher regard. So instead of wallowing in victimhood, I'm going to do something about this. But I know in that period, you were criticizing yourself harshly. And I would like for you to speak on that. Was the harsh criticism working for you? Or did, once you start approving yourself and recognizing what a beautiful soul you are, that is what sparked the change?
Okay, so I appreciate the times where I was hard on myself or criticizing myself, because it allowed me to understand that, girl, you ain't all that. So I need you to be relatable when it comes to other people. And in the work that I do, I'm a massage therapist, but not only that, I'm a seer. So for me, it allows me to be compassionate. And that's one of the things that I took from Christ reading the Bible. He's very compassionate, and that's how his gift was able to work. So I appreciate my times of beating up on myself and really looking in the mirror and taking that time to sit down and deal with myself in a real way outside of church, because that was the only way that was going to happen. And, I just feel like I'm more relatable to people when it comes to them struggling in the areas that they struggle in. So I can also be a light when they're in their darkness. So that's how I see that.
Cool. And let me just ask you this: how effective was approving of yourself? Like, how effective was that in your process, and what exactly did that look like? Was it self-affirmations, you verbally talking to yourself? Were you writing it down? How were you able to say, you know what, I am the dean of esoteric studies? I know I'm not a ugly, dumb individual. I need to start representing for, the enchanting person that I am. So what does the approval of yourself, like, what does that look like? Did you compliment yourself? Like, how did that process go?
Let me see. So with the whole movement of self-love, I think that helped me during my process. It helped me to understand that I can take myself seriously, and I can put myself first without that taken away from other people. I could be the center of my life and also do what I got to do for other people. So it was writing, it was crying, it was staying away from people that were not conducive to my elevation. It was a lot. And we call that, the shadow work phase, because there are so many different components that comes with going through that process of approving of yourself. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Yeah, because this actually this quote is coming from Louise Hay, and it's pertaining to the shadow work that we've been speaking of. And now I'm coming straight to Stan, because I know he has to. This was Stan, the shaman. You feel me? When he didn't have a job. That's before he had a job. But now, since he is working, we're gonna let the shaman cook. Go ahead, Shaman. Let me just say, you've been criticizing your shaman self for years. What about approving?
This was recent. I say like 5 years ago, when a little relative came to me in front of my family and said, I know the family secret. And we were all like, what's the family secret? And she said, you can do magic. And right then and there, I could have go ahead and deny it and just have her live through what I lived through growing up. And I said, well, everybody in this family could do magic. And we still go to church, and you're not going to hell. And you notice everyone in this family is a healer, and which was true, because a lot of us became doctors, nurses. We just all did this thing, and I'm sure enough a lot of us didn't recognize it. Caregivers, we were all doing it. Cousins, everybody was sitting there and just help her point it out to her, and the relief on her face was like, okay, I'm normal. And I'm like, yes. And we just do our check-ins, and just to make sure like she's not going through what I go through, and she's okay with when people say the word weird, like they say, oh, you're weird, and I want people to know like weird doesn't mean like you're crazy. That means like a lot of times just meant like you're a witch, or don't tell the church because they're gonna burn you. So,
or like Mr. Sean said earlier, simply you don't really understand it. Like when people say weird, it's usually weird it typically has a negative connotation attached to it. But I say that we're all a bit weird, and weird is very subjective, right? Some people think that it's weird that I watch sports, and I've never seen a Star Wars or a Star Trek movie. Some of my boys think that I'm completely weird for that. But then
understand, Star Wars and Star Trek are two different fields. I just have to say that.
No, but I'm just saying, people, I haven't seen either of them. And then people think I'm weird for that. But if I say you're weird for watching both of them, who was really right? It's just a matter of objectivity. You know what I mean?
I agree with you though. I haven't seen them, and I think people who like watch them things, they're kind of weird.
Okay, look, Star Wars, Star Trek are very two different things. Star Wars is actually more magic. Star Trek is sci-fi. Star Wars is not, it might be outer space, might be planets, but nowhere is this sci-fi. It doesn't deal with technology. It doesn't go in depth in technology, so they just deal with magic. Star Trek is technology. I just have to defend, I got to defend the arts.
I got you. Stan pulled out his nerd card on that one.
But wait,
oh my God.
Go ahead, Stan. Did you have anything else? Because I know you got to get up out of here, Stan. Did you have anything else to add?
And I'm just like, wow. Yep, I'm here. Oh, did you guys hear me?
Nah, you cut out.
Okay. I'll say like a couple months ago, her mother was concerned that her friends call her weird, right? Her mother called one of her friends called her weird. And she said, well, Mom, like everybody.
Stan, man, it's some voodoo stuff.
Oh, I got the face.
Oh
the
my
face here.
God.
The face here.
That's what I'm saying. I think this conversation is getting a little too spooky.
What time is it? It's almost 2. So, the witching hour is about to begin. So.
Oh, I'm saying, like, look, it's just good because like the little one was able to tell her mother that it's okay to be called weird, even though her friends call her weird, and ease her mom into like, look, we're all weird. And I thought that was dope. I'm like, look, like something
Really, we
where I
all
just
are
like
weird.
be open 5 years ago. Here she is, comfortable with herself and keeping a dream journal, and have an interest in God and seeing parallels and asking questions. And so, and a lot of things she just come on her own. A lot of kids just come up on their own. Like Miss O'Sheen said, a lot of times they just ask questions and then they get answers somewhere else. So sometimes it's best for parents, adults, aunties and uncles and cousins and brothers and sisters to actually have these conversations with family members so they don't feel like they're by themselves.
I agree with that.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. So yeah, this has been an
Oh, also one more thing.
Yeah,
Water
go
your
ahead.
plants because the Fae is reminding me I need to water my plant. So so listen to the Fae.
Okay. Miss O'Shine, you came off mute. You had to add something to add before we get up out of here?
No,
What you say? You kind of cut out.
no, I was just saying Stan is correct. Water your plants because you that is a part of spirituality when you have things to take care of that depend on you like that. It's a good thing. I was just gonna add that.
Okay. Well, it was a great thing that all of y'all came up, and I'm being extremely respectful of y'all time. So I'm gonna go ahead and shut it down. If y'all could just stay in the back for like 5 minutes, and then everybody that came through the stream, this is just episode 1, and it was fire. It's only gonna get better from here. I got more visuals to bring up, and I'm going to be joined by these esteemed, astute, illustrious guests, and we're just gonna leave it like that. This is Magic Principles, episode 1, and we out of here.